King's guard moves his horse closer for disabled girl's picture. The tall stone walls of the palace stood strong and proud, carrying the weight of many years of history. Tourists from different places slowly gathered near the wide gates, holding cameras, phones, and guidebooks. Some spoke in soft voices, while others simply stood still, taking in the scene before them. Everyone knew this place was special, and most people treated it with respect. Near the main gate stood the king's guard, perfectly straight and completely focused. He wore his traditional uniform, polished and neat, showing discipline and honor. Beside him was his horse, tall, well-trained and calm. The horse barely moved, as if it also understood the importance of the moment. Together, the guard and the horse looked like a living statue, something many people had only seen in pictures before. Tourists whispered to each other, reminding themselves of the rules. Do not touch, do not disturb, and keep your distance. Among the crowd was a small family who stood slightly away from the others. A father gently pushed a wheelchair, moving slowly so the path would be smooth. In the chair sat a young girl. She had a soft face and curious eyes that sparkled with interest. Her body was weak and she could not move freely like other children, but her mind was full of wonder. She looked around with excitement, noticing every small detail. For her, this visit was not just a trip, it was a rare and special experience. The girl's mother walked beside the wheelchair, holding a small bag and watching her daughter closely. She smiled every time the girl smiled, but there was also a quiet worry in her eyes. She wanted her daughter to enjoy the moment without feeling uncomfortable or left out. The family had planned this visit carefully, knowing that places like this were often crowded and not always easy for someone in a wheelchair. Still, they had come with hope in their hearts. As they moved closer to the palace gates, the girl's eyes fixed on the horse. She had never seen a horse so close before, especially one that looked so strong and elegant. The horse's shiny coat caught the sunlight, and its slow breathing showed how calm it was. The girl leaned forward slightly in her chair, her hands resting on her lap. A small smile formed on her face, the kind of smile that comes from pure happiness. The father noticed his daughter's reaction and stopped pushing the wheelchair. He followed her gaze and saw the guard and the horse. He understood instantly what had caught her attention. Reaching into his pocket, he took out his phone, thinking about taking a picture. However, as he looked at the distance between them and the guard, he hesitated. The rules were clear, and he did not want to cause trouble or make his daughter feel embarrassed. The mother also noticed the girl's interest. She bent down slightly and asked her daughter in a gentle voice if she liked the horse. The girl nodded slowly, her smile growing wider. She raised her hand a little and pointed toward the horse, making a soft sound of excitement. It was a small movement, but it meant everything. The parents exchanged a look, a silent conversation filled with love and understanding. Around them, other tourists were busy taking photos of the guard from far away. Some laughed quietly, others adjusted their camera angles, trying to get the perfect shot. No one paid much attention to the family at first. The parents felt a familiar feeling, one they had felt many times before, the feeling of being unsure, of not wanting to ask for special treatment, of not wanting their child to feel different. The girl continued to look at the horse, her eyes following even the smallest movement it made. When the horse gently shifted its weight, she let out a soft laugh. That sound, light and full of joy, stood out in the quiet space. It was not loud, but it was real. For a brief moment, it felt like the world slowed down just for her. The guard remained still, his face serious and focused straight ahead. Years of training had taught him discipline, patience, and control. His duty was to protect and to stand firm, no matter what happened around him. People walked past him every day. Children pointed, adults stared, and cameras flashed, yet he stayed unmoved. That was his role, and he respected it deeply. However, from the corner of his eye, the guard noticed something different this time. He saw the wheelchair. He saw the small girl sitting in it, her face bright with wonder. He noticed her pointing toward the horse, and the way her smile seemed to light up her entire face. Though his body remained still, his mind acknowledged the moment. He had seen many visitors, but something about this scene touched him in a quiet, human way. The horse, sensing the calm energy, lowered its head slightly and blinked slowly. The sound of its gentle breathing mixed with the soft noise of the crowd. The girl noticed this and smiled even more, as if the horse was greeting her in its own way. Her parents watched her closely, feeling both happiness and sadness. They were happy to see her joy, yet sad knowing how rare such moments were for her. The father lifted his phone again, framing the shot carefully. From where they stood, the picture would show the guard and the horse, but the distance made everything feel far away. He lowered the phone, unsure if it was worth taking the photo at all. The mother placed her hand on his arm, silently telling him that even being here mattered. The girl did not care about photos or rules. She was fully present in the moment. To her, the horse was magnificent, almost magical. She imagined how it might feel to touch its smooth coat or hear it up close. Though she could not say much, her eyes spoke clearly. They were full of admiration and innocent joy. Time passed slowly, but it felt meaningful. The family remained where they were, not wanting to disturb anyone. The parents told their daughter softly about the guard's role and how the horse helped him. The girl listened, her eyes never leaving the horse. Each word added to her sense of wonder. Around them, the crowd shifted, with some people leaving and others arriving. Yet the small family stayed, holding onto the moment as long as they could. The guard stood firm, the horse calm, and the palace silent behind them. No one knew yet that this simple morning, filled with quiet emotions and unspoken wishes, was about to become something unforgettable. This was only the beginning, a calm start to a moment that would soon touch many hearts. The family remained near the palace gate, standing quietly as if they did not want to disturb the peaceful space around them. The girl stayed focused on the horse, her eyes following every small movement it made. Even when people passed in front of her, she leaned slightly to the side so she could keep looking. For her, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. There was only the horse, strong and calm, standing beside the guard like a loyal friend. Her mother noticed how deeply her daughter was drawn to the scene. She gently brushed a strand of hair away from the girl's face and smiled softly. Moments like this were rare. Often outings were tiring and stressful, filled with careful planning and worry. But right now, her daughter looked truly happy. That alone made everything worth it. The father looked around again, checking the distance between them and the guard. He knew the rules were strict. The guards were trained to stay still, to avoid interaction, and to keep order. Many visitors had stories of being warned or asked to step back. The father did not want to risk embarrassing his family or making the moment uncomfortable. Still, he felt a small ache in his chest, wishing he could give his daughter a closer view. The girl raised her hand again and pointed toward the horse, this time holding her finger there a little longer. She made a soft sound, almost like a question. Her mother leaned down and spoke gently, explaining that the horse belonged to the guard and helped him do his duty. The girl listened carefully, her eyes wide, as if every word added something new to the picture in her mind. Nearby, a group of tourists gathered closer together, whispering excitedly. Some of them noticed the girl and smiled kindly, while others were focused on their cameras. One woman stepped aside to give the wheelchair more space, offering a quiet nod of respect. Small gestures like that often meant more than words. The guard remained in position, his posture perfect, his expression serious. To most people he looked distant and unapproachable, but inside his awareness had sharpened. He had noticed the girl's pointing hand, her bright eyes, and the way her parents hesitated. Years of service had taught him to observe without reacting, to understand situations quickly while remaining calm. He remembered his training, the long hours spent learning discipline and control. He remembered being taught that his role was not only to guard a place, but also to represent honor and respect. While the rules were clear, they were built on deeper values. Standing still did not mean being blind. Silence did not mean a lack of feeling. The horse sensed the presence of the nearby crowd, yet stayed calm. It shifted one hoof slightly and flicked its ear, reacting to a distant sound. The girl noticed this small movement and let out a quiet laugh. It was a gentle sound, full of wonder, not loud enough to draw attention but sincere enough to be felt. Her laughter reached her parents' hearts instantly. The mother felt her eyes grow warm and she quickly blinked, not wanting to show tears. The father smiled, holding his phone loosely in his hand. He wanted to capture this moment, but more than that, he wanted his daughter to feel included, to feel that the world was open to her too. He raised the phone again and tried to frame the picture. The angle was not perfect, but it showed the guard, the horse, and his daughter in the foreground. Still, the distance made the scene feel incomplete. He lowered the phone once more, unsure. He did not want a picture that reminded them of what they could not reach. The girl sensed her parents' emotions even if she did not fully understand them. She turned her head slightly to look at her mother, then back at the horse. Her smile never faded. To her, the moment was already special. She did not feel disappointment, only excitement. A few steps away, a young boy tugged at his father's sleeve and pointed at the horse as well. The father lifted the boy onto his shoulders so he could see better. The girl watched this briefly, then returned her attention to the horse. There was no envy in her eyes, only quiet curiosity. The guard noticed all of this in small glances, careful not to turn his head fully. He saw the father lifting his phone, then lowering it. He saw the mother's gentle movements and the girl's constant smile. The situation stayed with him, pressing lightly against his thoughts. He understood that this was not just another tourist moment. It was something personal. He also understood the power of small actions. In his role, even the smallest movement could be noticed and discussed. Yet he believed that duty and kindness did not stand on opposite sides. They could exist together, balanced carefully, just like the calm strength of the horse beside him. The crowd shifted again as more people arrived. A few visitors stepped too close and were quietly reminded by staff to keep their distance. The family stayed where they were, not wanting attention. The girl's arms rested comfortably on the wheelchair, her posture relaxed, her face glowing with simple joy. Time seemed to slow down. The palace walls stood silent, the guard unmoving and the horse steady. In that stillness, emotions grew stronger. The father took a deep breath, accepting that maybe this was enough. Maybe the memory itself mattered more than a photograph. But the guard's thoughts continued to turn. He remembered why he had chosen this path of service. He remembered believing that strength also meant understanding others. Though his face showed no expression, his heart had quietly made a choice. He had not acted yet, but the decision was forming. The horse shifted again, as if sensing its rider's focus. Its calm presence seemed to connect everyone in that small space, the guard, the family, and the quiet crowd around them. The girl leaned forward slightly, still smiling, still pointing, still full of hope without knowing it. No one spoke. No announcement was made, but something was changing. What began as a simple wish, noticed silently, was moving toward something meaningful. The moment stood on the edge of transformation, waiting for one gentle action to turn it into a memory that would last far beyond this quiet morning. The guard stood firm, just as he had been trained, but inside his thoughts were moving. He was aware of the quiet space around him, the gentle sounds of footsteps and the soft voices of visitors. Most of all, he was aware of the little girl in the wheelchair. Her smile had stayed the same for a long time, not fading, not weakening. It was a pure smile, one that asked for nothing but closeness to a moment she found beautiful. He took a slow breath, careful not to make any sudden movement. His duty mattered to him deeply. He respected the uniform, the tradition, and the trust placed in him. But he also believed that duty was not only about standing still. It was about understanding the people he served and the place he protected. In that quiet moment, he felt those ideas come together. The horse beneath him sensed the slight change in his rider's balance. It was trained to respond gently, to wait for clear signals. The guard pressed his heels softly, not sharply, just enough to guide the horse forward. The movement was slow and controlled, almost graceful. The sound of hooves touching the ground was light but noticeable. At first, people did not understand what was happening. A few tourists paused mid-conversation. Cameras lowered slightly. A quiet wave of attention moved through the crowd as they noticed the horse stepping forward. It was unexpected, but not alarming. The guard's posture remained strong and calm, showing that everything was under control. The family noticed the movement almost at the same time. The father's eyes widened slightly as he realized the horse was coming closer. He froze for a second, unsure of what to do. The mother gently placed her hand on the wheelchair handle, her heart beating faster. She did not speak, afraid that any sound might interrupt the moment. The girl noticed immediately. Her eyes grew wider and her smile turned into a look of pure amazement. She lowered her pointing hand, then raised it again, this time closer to her chest. The horse was no longer far away. It was coming toward her, step by careful step. The guard guided the horse just enough, stopping at a safe and comfortable distance. He made sure there was no fear, no risk, only calm. The horse stood quietly, its head slightly lowered as if acknowledging the small visitor before it. The guard did not speak. He did not smile, yet his actions spoke clearly. The crowd fell silent. In that silence there was no pressure, no excitement that felt forced. It was a respectful quiet filled with understanding. People realized they were witnessing something rare, something gentle. Some lowered their phones, choosing to watch instead of record. The mother felt tears gather in her eyes, and this time she did not hide them. She covered her mouth briefly, overwhelmed by the kindness of a moment she had not expected. The father finally lifted his phone again, but his hands shook slightly. He took a deep breath and focused, knowing this was a memory they would treasure forever. The girl let out a soft sound of joy. It was not loud, but it was full of feeling. She leaned forward a little, her body relaxed, her face glowing. She looked at the horse's eyes, then at its mane, taking in every detail. To her, this was more than a picture. It was connection. The horse remained calm, its breathing slow and steady. It flicked an ear and shifted its head slightly, allowing the girl a clearer view. The sunlight touched its coat, making it shine softly. The guard adjusted his posture just enough to make the scene feel welcoming, while still maintaining control and respect. The father captured the picture, then another, wanting to make sure the moment was saved. He lowered the phone and looked at his daughter, seeing happiness on her face that words could not explain. He felt a deep gratitude in his heart, not just toward the guard, but toward life itself for offering such a moment. Around them, people began to smile. Some nodded quietly. Others felt their hearts warm without fully understanding why. No one clapped. No one spoke loudly. It was as if everyone agreed that this moment deserved silence and respect. The guard stayed still for a few seconds longer, allowing the family time to enjoy the closeness. He could feel the importance of those seconds. He knew they mattered. He trusted his judgment and stood by his choice. The girl slowly lowered her hand and rested it on her lap, still smiling. Her eyes moved from the horse to the guard and back again. Though the guard's face showed no expression, she seemed to sense the kindness behind the uniform. She felt safe, seen, and included. After a short while, the guard gently guided the horse back, moving just a step away. The movement was smooth and calm, signaling that the moment was ending. The horse followed without resistance, returning to its original position. The family understood. The mother whispered a quiet thank you, not expecting the guard to respond. The father nodded respectfully, holding his phone close to his chest. The girl continued to smile, her happiness still fresh and bright. The guard returned fully to his position, standing tall once more. To anyone passing by who had not seen what happened, everything looked normal again. The uniform was still, the horse calm, and the palace unchanged. But for those who witnessed it, nothing felt the same. The crowd slowly returned to its soft noise. People began to move again, some exchanging quiet looks, others carrying the feeling of the moment with them. The family stayed for a few more seconds, not wanting to rush away. The girl looked once more at the horse, then leaned back comfortably. As they began to leave, the parents felt lighter. They had not asked for anything, yet they had been given so much. The girl held onto the memory in her own way, calm and content. Behind them, the guard remained steady, his duty continuing as always. But inside, he felt something settle gently. He knew he had done the right thing. A small action taken quietly had created a moment of meaning, and that was enough. The family slowly began to move away from the palace gate, but their steps felt lighter than before. The father pushed the wheelchair carefully, making sure the path was smooth. The mother walked beside them, still holding onto the feeling of the moment. The girl sat quietly now, her smile softer but still present, as if she was replaying everything in her mind again and again. After a few steps, the mother gently touched her daughter's shoulder and asked if she liked the horse. The girl nodded slowly and made a small happy sound. Her eyes looked calm, full of peace. She leaned back comfortably, holding the memory close in her heart. She did not need to say much. Her happiness was clear. The father glanced down at his phone and opened the picture he had taken. The image showed the guard standing tall, the horse close and calm, and his daughter in the foreground, smiling brightly. The picture was not perfect in a professional sense, but it was perfect in meaning. It showed a moment of kindness, captured forever. He felt his chest tighten with emotion and quickly locked the screen, afraid that if he stared too long, his eyes might fill with tears. Around them, people began to speak softly again. Some visitors smiled at the family as they passed. A few nodded in quiet respect. No one needed to explain what had happened. The feeling was shared without words. It moved gently through the crowd, connecting strangers for a brief time. The guard remained in his position, his posture straight, his face calm. From the outside, he looked the same as always, but inside there was a quiet warmth. He knew he had stepped slightly beyond routine, yet he also knew he had stayed true to the deeper meaning of his role. He did not seek attention or praise. He simply returned to stillness, trusting that the moment had been enough. The horse stood quietly beside him, relaxed and steady. Its calm nature had played an important part in the moment. It shifted its weight slightly, then became still again. The guard placed a gentle hand on the reins, maintaining control while allowing the horse to rest. Together, they formed a silent symbol of strength and care. A few minutes passed, and new visitors arrived. Some had heard whispers about what had just happened, while others knew nothing at all. Life continued as it always did at the palace gates. People came and went, cameras clicked, and the guards stood watch. Yet something invisible had changed. The atmosphere felt warmer, softer, as if kindness had left a mark in the air. The family reached a quieter area near the garden path. The father stopped the wheelchair and turned to face his wife. They exchanged a look filled with understanding. They had both felt it, the way one small action had lifted a weight they often carried. For once, they did not feel like they had to explain their child's needs or ask for patience. Someone had simply noticed. The mother wiped her eyes gently and smiled. She leaned down and hugged her daughter carefully. The girl rested her head against her mother's shoulder for a moment, peaceful and content. The world felt kind in that instant, and that feeling was rare and precious. They sat there for a while, letting the moment settle. The father looked around at the palace grounds. thinking about how places of power and tradition were often seen as cold and distant. Yet today, that same place had shown a human side. He felt grateful not just for the memory, but for the reminder that kindness could exist anywhere. Meanwhile, a few visitors who had witnessed the moment quietly shared their thoughts with one another. One person spoke about how unexpected it was. Another mentioned how moved they felt. Their voices stayed low, respectful. No one wanted to turn the moment into a show. It felt personal, even though many had seen it. The guard continued his duty, aware that people were still thinking about what he had done. He did not let it distract him. He focused on his posture, his breathing, and the rhythm of the space around him. Yet in his heart, he carried a sense of peace. He believed that strength was not weakened by kindness. Instead, it was strengthened by it. The horse remained calm, occasionally blinking or flicking its ear. It responded naturally to the quiet environment. The guard adjusted the reins slightly, a familiar motion that kept him grounded. Everything returned to its usual rhythm, but the meaning of the moment stayed alive. Back on the garden path, the family prepared to leave the palace grounds. The father pushed the wheelchair forward again, and the mother walked beside them. The girl looked up at the sky, then back toward the gates one last time. She did not wave or point this time. She simply looked, her expression peaceful. As they moved farther away, the sounds of the crowd faded. The palace walls stood tall behind them, but they no longer felt distant or cold. The family carried something far more valuable than a souvenir. They carried a story, one that would be told again and again, not for attention, but for hope. The mother thought about the future and the many challenges that still lay ahead. She knew there would be hard days, but this moment had given her strength. It reminded her that compassion could appear when least expected, in places where rules and tradition seemed unmovable. The father felt the same. He knew he would look at that picture many times, especially on difficult days. It would remind him that his daughter was seen, that her joy mattered, and that the world was capable of kindness. The guard stood watch as the sun shifted slightly in the sky. Time moved forward as it always did. Yet somewhere beyond the palace gates, a family carried away a memory that would last a lifetime. And within the guard, a quiet certainty remained that a small, thoughtful action had made a difference. Nothing more needed to be done. The moment had already done its work, touching hearts in ways no one could fully measure. The family returned home later that day, tired but peaceful. The journey back felt different from the journey there. The girl sat quietly in her wheelchair, holding a small toy in her hand, but her mind was still filled with the image of the horse and the guard. Every now and then, a soft smile appeared on her face, as if the memory returned to her without warning. At home, the mother helped her daughter settle into her favorite chair. The room was quiet and familiar, filled with small comforts. The father placed his phone on the table and finally looked again at the pictures he had taken. This time, he allowed himself to feel everything. He zoomed in slightly, noticing the calm face of the horse, the steady posture of the guard, and the bright joy on his daughter's face. It was more than a picture. It was proof that kindness had reached them when they least expected it. That evening, the family sat together and talked about the day. They spoke softly, not wanting to turn the memory into something heavy. They laughed gently when remembering how surprised they had been. The girl listened in her own way, watching their faces and reacting with small sounds and smiles. She may not have understood every word, but she understood the feeling. She knew something good had happened. Later that night, the mother shared the picture with a close family member, adding only a short message. She did not explain much. She felt that the picture spoke for itself. Within hours, messages of warmth and kindness began to arrive. People responded with gentle words, saying how the image had touched their hearts. The mother read each message quietly, feeling thankful but also protective of the moment. She did not want it to become something loud or rushed. Over the next few days, the picture slowly reached more people. Someone shared it with a friend who shared it again. Soon, it was seen by many. Each person saw something a little different in it. Some saw kindness, some saw respect, some saw hope. The family watched this quietly, amazed by how one small moment had traveled so far. The father felt proud, not because of attention, but because his daughter's joy had touched others. The mother felt comforted, knowing that people could still be moved by gentle actions. And the girl continued her days as usual, unaware of how many hearts she had reached simply by being herself. Back at the palace, life continued as always. The guard returned to his duties each day, standing tall and focused. He did not speak about what had happened. He did not expect recognition. To him, it was simply a moment where he followed his sense of humanity. Still, he noticed a change in himself. He felt more aware of the people around him, more connected to the reason he served. Sometimes visitors looked at him a little longer than usual. Some smiled softly, others nodded with quiet respect. He understood that some of them might have seen the picture. He acknowledged them only by remaining calm and steady, just as he always had. The horse continued its routine as well, calm and dependable. It responded to training with the same patience as before. Yet there was something comforting in knowing that it had been part of a moment that mattered. The guard often rested his hand gently on the reins, feeling grounded by the familiar presence beside him. Weeks passed, then months. The picture was no longer new, but its meaning did not fade. For the family, it became a source of strength. On difficult days, when challenges felt heavy, the mother would remember how kindness had appeared unexpectedly. The father would remember that the world was not always distant or unkind. And the girl would smile when she saw the picture, her eyes lighting up as if the moment was happening all over again. The story was shared quietly in conversations, not as something dramatic, but as something real. People spoke about how small actions could change someone's day or even their life. Some said it reminded them to slow down and notice others. Others said it made them believe again in simple goodness. The guard never met the family again, and that was okay. The moment did not need to be repeated. Its purpose had already been fulfilled. Sometimes, meaningful moments are not meant to continue. They are meant to exist once and leave a lasting mark. One afternoon, as the guard stood in the same place, watching another crowd of visitors pass by, he noticed a child pointing excitedly. He remained still just as before, but inside he felt calm and certain. He knew that even without movement, his presence could still mean something. He had learned that kindness did not always need action. Sometimes it lived in awareness. For the family, the memory became part of their story. Not a story of difficulty, but a story of connection. They did not tell it to gain sympathy. They told it to share hope. It reminded them that they were not alone, that their daughter was seen, and that her joy mattered. The girl grew as time moved forward. She continued to face challenges, but she also carried moments of happiness within her. That day at the palace remained one of those moments. Even if she could not explain it in words, she carried it in her calm smiles and gentle reactions to the world. In the end, nothing about the palace changed. The guard still stood watch. The horse still waited patiently. Visitors still came and went. But something invisible had been added, a quiet reminder that behind uniforms, rules, and routines, there were human hearts capable of care. And that was the true gift of the moment. Not the picture, not the attention, but the reminder that kindness, when given freely and without expectation, can travel far and stay long. The story did not need a loud ending. It ended softly, just like it began. With understanding, respect, and a simple act that turned an ordinary day into something unforgettable.